LBC News. Travel.
The M3 in Hampshire is closed northbound for roadworks between Junction 5 for Hook and 4A at Farnborough. On the M4 eastbound in Wiltshire, there are queues towards an accident between Junction 15 for Swindon East and 14 at Hungerford. In Oxfordshire, the A34 in Oxford is closed northbound between the Botley Interchange and Pear Tree Interchange for weekend roadworks. It is looking heavy on surrounding routes as traffic diverts away from the closure. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Garish, LBC News Time, coming up to 11:45 on this Sunday morning. And, of course, the Conservative Party psychodrama continues. Downing Street's now denying that the Prime Minister changed Boris Johnson's honours list, which is allowed for his time at number 10. This that the former Prime Minister's version contained Nadine Dorries and Nigel Adams, but neither in Friday's final draw. Both, of course, resigned from their positions as MPs, triggering by-elections. Rishi Sunak's team have been saying a commission looked at it before he signed it off. Well, let's bring in LBC News reporter Amelia Cox, the latest on this. What's going on, Amelia?
Yeah, they say a week is a long time in politics, but it seems a weekend is long too. The government is obviously trying to get ahead of this turmoil and kind of change the narrative slightly. We've had Grant Shapps doing the media round this morning, and he's insisting that the world has moved on from Boris Johnson, but it doesn't really feel that way. Obviously, the former Prime Minister triggering 3 by-elections this weekend, including one in his own constituency of Uxbridge and Ruislip. Now, opposition parties, of course, trying to take advantage of this. Labour and the Lib Dems are calling for a general election in response. Writing in the Sunday Mirror today, Sir Keir Starmer has criticised Rishi Sunak and says that he's failed to stand up to his former boss. He's called for him to find a backbone and call a general election. Now, Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, has been speaking to Sky News this morning.
They're the party of government, and if this goes on, the chaos will continue. You've got Jacob Rees-Mogg, one of Boris Johnson's principal allies, writing in one of the Sunday newspapers today that not only should Boris come back, but he would be a good candidate in future leadership elections. So it's quite clear this is going to continue in the Conservative Party, and they cannot fix it themselves. The only way to fix this is to have a general election and a change of government.
Now, arguably, there is perhaps even more damage being done from within the Conservative Party. We've had the newly knighted Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg writing in the Mail on Sunday, and he's already predicting Boris Johnson's comeback and says that he will not only potentially return to Parliament, but could also become the next Conservative leader as well. He's warned against any Tory officials trying to block a future nomination for Boris Johnson to stand in a different constituency, saying that it would shatter party unity and plunge the Tories into civil war. So another tumultuous day in Westminster.
Indeed. It seems like it's set to continue, and I'm sure you'll keep us across it all. Thank you very much. LBC News reporter Amelia Cox there. Now, Pat McFadden, who we've just been hearing from with Amelia, Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, has been doing the media rounds this morning, saying that homeowners are spending an extra £7,000 a year in mortgage payments compared to this time 2 years ago. This blow would have been a reckless gamble by the Conservatives in last year's mini-budget. The government says it is committed to halving inflation this year and to continue to reflect that throughout the programme here on LBC News.
LBC News.
Elsewhere, we've been hearing from former President Donald Trump, who's accusing the current incumbent, Joe Biden, of trying to put him in jail because he's his main political opponent. His successor is really the one behind these charges that have been filed over Mr. Trump's handling of classified documents. The White House strongly denies ever interfering. The Republican Party event in Georgia overnight, these supporters were asked if the latest developments change how they feel.
I think they're going to continue to harass him and hound him until they do their best to get him out of the election.
He done exactly what he said he would do. He would make America great again.
I'm not sure if he's the best option, but he may be.
And we'll get much more on this, no doubt, throughout the week as well. Former President Donald Trump due in court this week over those 37 charges, all to do with him keeping classified documents, thousands of them, at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. Pictures of boxes, anyway, being seen, stored next to a toilet in a bathroom. He's going to be contesting all of those charges. We'll keep you across the very latest on that.
Weather news never stops. LBC News.
Elsewhere in the United States, several people have been injured during a mass shooting in San Francisco. Guy Stewart has the details for LBC News.
The San Francisco Police Department says thankfully no one has died in this attack, though 9 people have been injured. The force had tweeted that all are expected to survive their injuries. They've received treatment in hospital. The city's emergency services were called to a clothing store in the city's Mission District. Dying Breed was celebrating its 6th anniversary with an in-store party when this incident happened after 9 p.m. local time. People were then told to avoid the area of 24th Street and Treat Avenue. Now, officers say there is no ongoing threat and the shooting appears to be targeted and isolated. No immediate arrests have been reported.
Thank you very much. Guy Stewart reporting for LBC News.
This is LBC News.
I've been hearing of lots of strike action over the past year, and indeed there is more on the way. Staff working to process driving licences and vehicle tax renewals have walked out this morning. Members of the PCS union are around over pay, pensions and working conditions. They're taking 15 days of action. Sarah Evans from the unions told LBC News it's not being taken lightly.
We can fully understand that people are going to face delays and they're not going to be happy about it. However, we have been put in a desperate situation. We don't call industrial action lightly. Nobody wants to disappoint the customers that we have. We're here to deliver a service and we want to do that to the best of our ability. But unfortunately, for years now, we have been ignored with our pleas to have a decent pay rise. And if the government would just, offer us what they're offering other sectors, we know that the money's there to give us a decent pay rise, but for some reason they don't want to pay it. So I would say that, please don't point your anger at us and to the staff that we have. If you're bringing in the guys that answer the phone, things like that, just, point the blame where it lands, which is at the government's feet. They're quick enough to spend millions and billions of public money on things that just are of no use to anyone. They could have looked after themselves and feed the pockets of their friends, whilst we get left just with nothing. And that's what we're hoping that the public will see, that we are doing this out of desperation, and it really is our last hope.
Sarah Evans from the PCS union there. Well, the UK government says it is holding regular talks with the union, but says big pay rises will prolong the cost of living crisis. This as 4 out of 5 employers reportedly think the current wave of strikes should be resolved by independent mediation. It's according to the conciliation service egac, which has surveyed 1,000 senior staff. Director of Dispute Resolution, Kate Novici, says this research didn't include unions when speaking to LBC News.
This was a survey that was done specifically of employers. And I think the really good news from an egac point of view is it simply reflects the fact that employers are demonstrating through this survey that they're aware of the value of that third-party independent assistant if it's needed to get folks out of a tricky corner when they're in a dispute situation. It's not always easy to resolve these issues. It requires a great deal of thorough work, thoughtful work, considered effort on all parts. Everyone involved really is there to sort of dig deep and to put aside perhaps some of the things that happened in the past and to be really focused on the future. And I think that's something that's difficult to understand unless you're in the room with these situations. So yes, not always easy, but a great success rate from our point of view in getting people over the finish line in the end, once we've got them round the table to really address matters.
That's EGAS's Director of Dispute Resolution, Kate Novici, speaking on LBC News this morning with Sunday War.
This is LBC News.
Now, if you live in a city centre, no doubt you'll have seen e-bikes and e-scooters taking over the streets in recent years. Well, there are calls to put number plates on e-bikes to make sure that they're insured. A committee of MPs and the industry want them to be regulated in the same way as other vehicles. After the deaths of 3 teenagers in 2 separate incidents in Cardiff and Manchester just in the past month. Well, joining me now is Tony Campbell, Chief Executive of the Motorcycle Industry Association. Joining me on LBC News Live. Very good morning to you, Tony.
Good morning.
So, would you like to see tighter regulation?
Yeah, I think the regulation that currently exists, we have regulation for bicycles, which is not
Ronald's Way Tower Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is 8 miles northwest, 2,900 feet with echo to land.
We have regulation for what people would call
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Ronald's Way Tower.
Scooters and motorcycle regulation is really quite strict. It's got whole vehicles approval. And then for bicycles, obviously it's just done under a self-declaration where the manufacturer produces a bicycle.
Fly left downwind runway 26 Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra.
And then they self-declare, so there's no testing of that regulation. What we've seen over recent years is we've seen the advent of step scooters, which currently are still illegal other than the official trials, and we have e-bikes. Now, an e-bike which is built to the regulation which says 250 watt, pedal assisted, and the assistance must cut off at 15.5 mile an hour. But as far as we're concerned, they can remain to be a bicycle. However, what we're seeing now is that with electric power, it's much easier to manipulate performance, and we're seeing more and more examples now of e-step scooters and what people perceive to be e-bikes, which are performing like motorcycles and scooters. Industry perspective, it's about time that was addressed and the correct and fit-for-purpose regulation is introduced.
And so that would be with insurance and number plates?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing here is about being able to identify the user and make sure that the user is trained if training is a requirement, certainly having some sort of protection. Of course, then being able to be identified, because there's no question, which we've seen unfortunately these unfortunate situations with some deaths of young teenagers. But I'm up in London very often. Even the large logistics firms that are using these types of vehicles, e-cargo bikes, I don't see much pedaling going on. They're using bicycle brakes, large payloads. This is a recipe for disaster. And the more, of course, we want to clean up the air. We want to make the cities a nicer place to live and work. But we have to do it safely. We have to have regulation that is, as I said, fit for purpose.
Does it mean as well that people who shouldn't be able to are using these e-bikes? And surely there's no regulation of them at the moment, so anyone could just hop on one?
Well, without question. I mean, as it stands at the moment, and I certainly couldn't quote any figures, and I wouldn't want to try to estimate what the illegal use is. But even for an e-bike, you're meant to be 14. To use an e-bike, even with the current law that as it stands. But of course, we're seeing people using all sorts of, whether it's e-bikes, whether it's e-step scooters, using them illegally. They are illegal, e-step scooters particularly. E-bikes are illegal if they don't fit the criteria that I mentioned before. Therefore, this regulation needs tightening up. And the issue now is that because we're seeing large-scale use, the cat's out of the bag, as they say, and therefore, what do we now do to correct this post-event? And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. But it's certainly needed. Otherwise, we're going to no doubt end up with more casualties. And arguably, people are actually, paying insurance, taxing their vehicle, having the right license, wearing the right correct level of rider protection. Going about their business, legally, it's just unfair that there are a lot of people. They're not loopholes. They're simply breaking.
Clear to land runway 26
Tony Campbell,
X-ray
Chief
Golf
Executive
Sierra.
of the Motorcycle Industry Association, there on calls to put number plates on e-bikes and to make sure that they are insured.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Now, Now, fans are still celebrating after last night's massive win for Manchester City. They won their first ever Champions League title. And as winners of the Premier League and the FA Cup, that means they've got an historic treble.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I cried, I felt funnies. Yeah, it was amazing.
From the cradle to the grave, that is the icing on the cake.
We will always have that night in there. That was absolutely fantastic. And this season, nobody can take that away from us.
They're only the second English team to win the treble. Of course, Manchester United, their nearest rivals, doing it in 1999. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said never in his lifetime did he think he'd get to see two trebles won. He's congratulated the team for their efforts. They are on their way to the airport and they'll be heading back to Manchester for a hero's welcome. Of course, we're going to see the big open-top bus tour parading the Champions League trophy through the centre of Manchester tomorrow. We'll bring you all of that as we get it. But up next, here on LBC News at midday, I've got the latest news headlines.
LBC News. Weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It'll feel murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
LBC News.
You can't put a price on togetherness or excitement, friendship or achievement. And you can enjoy them even more when you hear every moment. Our best-selling hearing aids are up to £300 off and come with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Book your free hearing check today at bootshearingcare.com. Boots, with you for life. See bootshearingcare.com for details.
If you're looking to trim your spending, checking for subscriptions that you no longer need could be an easy win. The Barclays app makes it simple. You can view your subscriptions and upcoming payments in one place, helping you to manage your spending. You might even spot some other savings you can make right now, too. For more money help, search Barclays Cost of Living. Barclays, make money work for you. You need to be 11 or over to access this product or service using the app. T's and C's apply.
Does your broadband slither around your home? And at peak times, do things feel a little constricted? Well, not when you get full fiber broadband from EE. You get the peak time speeds you pay for. Count on EE, full fibre broadband, powered by BT.
Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage.
I've lost my car keys. Lost the car once in a multi-storey. Lost my patience, my hair. Lost that a while back. But this week I found things I thought had gone forever. The crackle of needle on vinyl, the tst of a fizzy drink, leaves crunching. I found them all at Specsavers. Got hearing aids from £495 and bosh, those sounds are back. So's my joie de vivre. You're better off with Specsavers. Book a free hearing test today. Still can't find those keys, though.
LBC News. The latest news headlines. Next.
Carl! What are you doing?
What's that, Sergey?
What are you doing?
Just mowing the lawn. I've already got rid of those hideous weeds.
Oh, they're not weeds. They're flowers.
I can't hear you, bro, but watch out. I'm just getting the rest of them.
My delphiniums. My rhododendrons.
See you later, weeds.
My award-winning hydrangeas. Oh.
Don't wombat it. Meerkat it.
Simples.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC News,
where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it is 1 minute past 12. A very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Gerrish. There are now calls for a general election as the Conservatives face a civil war.
Another day of the Tory psychodrama. I'm LBC's James Goodison with the latest.
While Labour says last year's mini-budget means homeowners are having to spend an extra £7,000 a year.
People are coming off 2 or 5 year mortgage rates every month and are meeting increases in bills of hundreds of pounds a month.
In breaking news, we are just hearing 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. It's reported around 30 people were on board. We'll bring you the very latest as we get it. And Manchester City are now making their way home for a hero's welcome after winning the Champions League and the elusive treble.
Bring the treble on to Manchester. You can't beat it, can you?
I've followed them for 40 years. That is unbelievable.
LBC News. Weather.
Hot and humid for most. Further thunderstorms are also likely with highs of 30 degrees. I'm David Dom and I've got a full forecast in the next 15 minutes.
LBC News. Travel.
The M3 in Hampshire is closed northbound for roadworks between Junction 5 for Hook and 4A at Farnborough. On the M4 westbound in Berkshire, it's slow moving towards the emergency bridge repairs between Junction 13 for Cheveley and 14 at Hungerford. In Oxfordshire, the A34 in Oxford is closed northbound from the Botley interchange to the Pear Tree interchange for weekend roadworks. It is looking heavy on surrounding routes as traffic diverts away from the closure. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Gerrish. LBC News time, 3 minutes past 12 on this Sunday afternoon. Just going to bring you some more information on that breaking news that we're hearing. 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on board a boat during a sea cruise in the Egyptian Red Sea. 12 other Brits were rescued from the boat, which we're hearing from local authorities was off the coast of Marsa Alam. These authorities saying initial reports suggested the fire was the result of an electrical fault. The boat reportedly left Port Galliard on the 6th of June, had been due to return on Sunday. That's the very latest that we are getting. We'll bring you any more on this whenever we can.
Request flight following.
But for now, back to the latest Conservative infighting. The Energy Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the world has moved on from Boris Johnson as he defends the leadership of the current incumbent, Rishi Sunak. Labour's calling on the current Prime Minister to announce a general election after his predecessor spectacularly resigned as an MP on Friday. 2 close allies followed him, triggering 3 by-elections for the Conservatives to defend.
Roger, Beechcraft,
there is speculation there could be more resignations on the way. LBC News reporter James Goodison can tell us more on this. James?
Request clearance to transition
Rachel,
Charlie
that's right.
airspace.
Really the question is, how will this Tory psychodrama play out over this weekend? There have already been 3 resignations, Boris Johnson and 2 of his key supporters, Nigel Adams and Nadine Dorries. So 3 big by-elections on the horizon for Rishi Sunak, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But really the question at the moment is, will there be any other Tory MPs who just resign on the spot? I would say as the hours go on, that it seems unlikely there is going to be, despite claims from Boris Johnson's camp that more were coming. There haven't been any as of yet, and the government trying to move on from the excitement on Friday evening. Here's the Energy Secretary, Grant Shapps, speaking this morning.
Boris was perfectly entitled to remain as an MP. He has decided to stand down, and a couple of my other colleagues, all of whom I should say I've worked with, and Boris in particular, I liked working with him as Prime Minister. But, as I said right at the beginning of this, the world has moved on. He is the one who's removed himself from the current sort of political scene, standing down as a Member of Parliament, and we've got excellent leadership in place.
It was very interesting just to hear what exactly Grant Shapps had to say there. Quite amiable, but also very clear, Rachel, the idea that Boris Johnson chose to stand down and that the world has moved on. Let's just talk about the papers as well, because the Sunday papers obviously bring some excitement today, notably Jacob Rees-Mogg has written in the Mail on Sunday. He is a real Boris Johnson supporter, but has said he's not going to quit his seat. He did warn, though, against the party blocking Boris Johnson attempting to run in another seat. This is quite a punchy quote from it. Any attempt to do so would shatter our fragile party unity and plunge the Conservatives into civil war. So is that something that's potentially coming up at the next general election? Boris Johnson not running in Uxbridge, but running somewhere else, potentially somewhere a little bit safer. Sir Keir Starmer's also been in the papers as well, calling for a general election. He's asked Rishi Sunak to finally find a backbone. Here is a member of his shadow cabinet, Pat McFadden.
First of all, used and played Rishi Sunak to get approval for this honours list that he wanted. But then in that resignation statement that he made on Friday, he has attacked a number of policies around not having a trade deal with the United States. This is not over.
Let's just talk about those by-elections then, Rachel, because they are in Uxbridge, Mid-Bedfordshire and Selby and Ainsty. Now, Uxbridge is a marginal seat. It only has a 7,000 majority.
Ronald's Way approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Beechcraft B5811 miles northwest of Ronald's Way 3,100 feet.
There's a lot of context
Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
That seat that Labour will be hoping to exploit. And I think that if that seat is lost, not too many people will give Rishi Sunak too much of a hard time. What might be harder to explain is the other two seats, which have a majority both
Ronald's Way approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Beechcraft B5812 miles northwest of Ronald's Way 3,100 feet.
That's happened. It's a
request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
Democrats to really cause some damage to Rishi Sunak. We don't know yet for certain when those by-elections are going to take place or whether they're going to happen on the same day, but it could end up being quite extraordinary. There are some positives though for Rishi Sunak. First and foremost, he has avoided the long drawn-out process of the Privileges Committee report coming out, the vote having to take place in Parliament, which could potentially have divided the Tory party in a really public way. It also perhaps draws a line under Boris Johnson at related scandals.
Cleared through the Charlie airspace, Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra.
From him, the next general election, probably just about 12 months away.
Thank you very much. LBC News reporter in Westminster, James Goodison there. Let's bring in now David Jeffrey, senior lecturer in British politics at the University of Liverpool. Very good afternoon to you, David.
Oh, thank you.
So, what does the future look like for the Conservative Party? It's not seeming like they're the most unified party at the moment.
No, but it hasn't seemed like they were the most unified party for a while now. I think for the Conservative, Rishi, I think, will be a sigh of relief, actually, that this is the way that Boris Johnson's got a bang. And if, like I think your previous analyst was saying, you know, if he loses some of these upcoming elections, by-elections, that's not going to look so bad than an ongoing Conservative civil war. And I think he's probably quite happy to be seeing the back of Boris Johnson.
So you think that Rishi Sunak will be resisting these calls for a general election? He'll happily go to the by-elections?
Yes, I think so. I don't see that it's in his interest to have a snap general election, especially look at the kind of boring minutiae of general elections. Things like candidate selection is on for both parties now, and the last thing that they want to do is rush into a snap election and end up with some unsavoury characters as MP, which is part of the issue of the 2019 cohort, where decisions had to be made quickly, and then you bring in MPs who very quickly buckle under the pressure of a background that's not ideal. So I think he'll resist the call for the general election. I hope the economy recovers. Hopes there'll be more good news from Ukraine, the energy bills fall there that can link to the people at the end of next year, probably with a much better econ offer than he has at the moment.
Do you think it's realistic that we could see a split in the Conservative Party?
No, I don't. I'm quite happy to stick my colours to the mast there. I think we've got a political system that really concentrates politicians' minds. First past the post is not kind to splinter parties. Just look at the SDP in the 1980s. It would be electoral suicide for anybody, I think, considering a new Johnson party. We see how little traction Reform, Reclaim, any of these parties on the right have maybe seen how the Lib Dems have struggled to come back from their kind of post-2010 nadir. It would not end well for those who, and it would just seem to harm the Conservative Party, or which they might want to do out to spite. But it's also worth remembering these MPs have given years of service to the Conservative Party, and although they might be annoyed at the moment that I think will pass in a more set approach to how our electoral system works will begin.
We've also heard these suggestions that potentially former Prime Minister Boris Johnson could look at the seat being left by his friend Nadine Dorries, who has resigned. Do you think that's a realistic possibility?
I mean, as funny as it would be, I don't think CCHQ would allow that for a second. They've shown in the past that they're happy to have quite a tight control over candidate selection for the by-elections, and it is just completely implausible that Rishi Sunak would allow that to happen. So as fun as it might be kind of reading these theories on Twitter, I doubt it's actually going to happen in the real world.
But then we've heard from now Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg in the Sunday papers today saying that for CCHQ to block that would lead to a Tory civil war.
I think Jacob Rees-Mogg is slightly overplaying on there, and what might make for a good article doesn't necessarily make for political reality. And I think it's also what the organisations, like say the Conservative Democratic organisation, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg forget. It's the bad Boris Johnson's tenure as Prime Minister. Tory members wanted rid of him. Everyone was fed up of the constant drip of scandal and disappointment. It wasn't just a kind of left-wing plot or a Remainer plot. Yeah, Conservative members, the most loyal of the loyal, they wanted him gone because they were sick of the psychodrama. So I think people who are saying that Boris Johnson is the only leading light within the Conservative Party and members would be willing to rip the party up over having him kicked out, I think they're wide of the mark, and I think they're actually the ones who aren't in touch with the members.
So do you more agree with Grant Shapps, who today's been doing the media rounds, saying that he thinks that the country's moved on from Boris Johnson?
I think a lot of people will have a soft spot for Boris, and that was part of his charm. It's a Greek tragedy in a way, in that the things that made Boris Johnson such an effective campaigner and a politician that many people felt connected with, despite massive differences in background or whatever, those same characteristics are the ones that led to his downfall. His inability to play by the rules meant that he seemed like a normal person to voters, but it also got him into hot water under COVID. And I think politically, anyway, the Conservative Party has moved on from Boris Johnson, and the specific context that meant Boris Johnson could thrive. You know, Corbyn, the need to kind of push through Brexit and that boosterism, they're gone now, and it's a different context that needs, I think, different types of political leadership.
It's great to get your insight. Thank you very much, David Jeffrey, Senior Lecturer in British Politics at the University of Liverpool. Of course, we're going to continue to reflect the latest Tory drama throughout the programme here on LBC News. You can find it on our website as well, lbc.co.uk.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
I'm just going to bring you some more breaking news. We're hearing new weather warnings have been issued by the Met Office for thunderstorms and rain today and tomorrow. 4 yellow thunderstorm warnings in place from now until, from midday till 9 o'clock on Monday. Cover parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. A yellow warning for rain has been released, covering southern parts of England and Wales from 7 o'clock tonight until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. These yellow warnings mean thunderstorms and rain could bring disruption with potential flooding and difficult driving conditions, according to the Met Office, of course. We've seen very hot weather recently. Yesterday, the hottest day of the year so far. 32 degrees recorded in Surrey, and it could top 30 again today as well.
For Beechcraft X-ray Golf Sierra.
Before potentially the rain in Wadhurst.
Belfast approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-ray Golf Sierra 3,100 feet.
Maybe for a day or two.
Well, next week's going to be 25, 30 degrees, so everyone's happy when the sun's out.
Still to come, we're going to get the latest as Manchester City head home for a hero's welcome after winning the Champions League and the treble. But up next, we've got the very latest weather forecast and then the headlines.
LBC News. Weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It'll feel murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
LBC News.
As Bethany opened her Amazon parcel, her heart began to race. Waterproof LCD display and heart rate monitoring. This fitness tracker won first place with Bethany for quality and price. 5 stars from Bethany. With star reviews from you and star prices from us. Start your search on Amazon today.
Can I help you, sir?
Oh, I hope so. It's Jimmy here, my budget. He hasn't made a sound for weeks, so I thought I'd better bring him down here to the vets.
Right.
He used to be so cheerful, chirping away all day, but now, listen, nothing. He's lost his voice. Is there anything you can recommend?
Maybe try the Specsavers next door?
Lost sounds? Specsavers could help you find them. With qualified audiologists and hearing aids from £495, you're better off with Specsavers. Book a free hearing test today.
Let's say you got £200 cash back. Joy! What now? How about 500 or so sausages for the barbecue? Or maybe 10 litres of sunscreen? Get cash back on a load of Samsung tech, like £200 on the Epic Galaxy S23 Ultra, and bring some more joy to your summer. That's like 105 ice creams.
Purchase before 4th of July from a participating retailer. Claim from Samsung within 30 days of purchase. T's and C's apply.
Your wife is just through here.
Oh, Ivan!
And
You're a safe. Thank you. Thank you.
Every day, the Red Cross helps families through the conflict in Ukraine, and it all starts with you. Help us support millions of people in crisis across Ukraine and in 191 other countries at redcross.org.uk. Together, we are the world's emergency responders.
Get ready for that winning feeling with Win Plus. Enter now to win tech, cash and loads more at winplus.co.uk. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
LBC News.
As Bethany opened her Amazon parcel, her heart began to race. Waterproof LCD display and heart rate monitoring. This fitness tracker won first place with Bethany for quality and price. 5 stars from Bethany. With star reviews from you and star prices from us. Start your search on Amazon today.
Do you know what? Tomorrow I'll have been here 20 years.
20 years? That's amazing! We should be celebrating.
I don't think anyone will remember, and anyway, I don't really want any fuss.
You make the moments that matter. We just send the flowers. Singflowers.com for beautiful bouquets, plants and gifts. Order before 9 p.m. for next weekday delivery. See website for details. Sing Flowers. Amazing every time.
Janet from Macmillan Cancer Support has discovered a new weapon in the fight against cancer. Dominoes. By getting African and Caribbean communities together over a game at the Pineapple Club in Southeast London, she's helping to break cultural taboos about the Big C and ensuring that people get the advice they need so everyone wins, even though Janet never does. Macmillan Cancer Support. Wherever you are, we do whatever it takes to help people living with cancer.
Get ready for that winning feeling with Win Plus. Enter now to win tech, cash and loads more at winplus.co.uk. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
The news in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes. 24 hours a day. Where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it's now 20 past 12. A very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Gerrish. There are now calls for a general election as the Conservatives face a civil war. 3 by-elections have been triggered by the resignation of Tory MPs in just 24 hours, including, of course, the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. Labour says last year's mini-budget means that homeowners are having to spend an extra £7,000 a year on their mortgage. And thunderstorms are now expected after yesterday's hottest day of the year, starting tonight in the south of England and Wales before then hitting most of the UK tomorrow.
Belfast Tower Beach Craft Alpha Sierra X-ray Golf Sierra.
The M3
4 miles
Hampshire is
southeast,
closed
3,100
northbound for
feet.
roadworks between
Echo to
junction
land.
5 for Hook and Quarry at Farnborough and the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire. It's queuing towards an accident between junction 11 at Dunstable and 11 at Dunstable South. On the M4 westbound in Berkshire, it's slow towards the emergency bridge repairs between junction 13 for Cheveley and 14 at Hungerford. And in Oxfordshire, the A34 is closed northbound from the Botley interchange to the Pear Tree interchange for roadworks. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Our next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Gerrish. LBC News time 21 minutes past 12 on this Sunday afternoon.
Cleared to land runway 22
Now, Boris
Beechcraft
Johnson's
X-ray Golf
spectacular
Sierra.
resignation as an MP on Friday night has now sparked calls from the Labour leader for a general election. The former Prime Minister used his decision to step down to attack that report from the Privileges Committee into Partygate that he received, which has been examining if indeed he did mislead Parliament over the scandal. Close allies Nadine Dorries and Nigel Adams have also resigned, triggering 3 by-elections for the Conservatives to defend. As Keir Starmer says, Rishi Sunak should find a backbone and go to the polls. Aubrey Allegretti is political correspondent for The Guardian. He's told LBC News how all of this might change voting intentions in red wall seats.
It's a very difficult one because the red wall is a sort of a fairly disparate list of names of MPs, and they're all incredibly grateful to him for their seats. And those MPs were probably the ones that were hardest to succumb to the realisation that he had to go. They really waited and sort of waited it out the longest and refused to accept that they thought he should go. But they are now mostly of the volition that he should have. I suppose the difficulty is that Rishi Sunak hasn't really understood yet what coalition of voters he's got to get next year, probably at the general election. Could obviously be January 25, but no one really thinks that, because the Red Wall and sort of traditional Tory Southern Heartlands were the coalition that Boris Johnson managed to forge very successfully. Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to have much of a grip on either. And indeed at the Northern Research Group conference, which is this group of Tory MPs that met up in Doncaster last week, where I was, they were really sort of voicing their concerns and saying, we've sort of done the stable party management bit, we've narrowed the ship, now we quite like some sort of fairly bold, bright vision. I think they were accusing him of being quite Starmer-esque, really, privately, in that they didn't think that he had that kind of overarching, inspiring vision for the country.
That's Aubrey Allegretti, political correspondent for The Guardian. Well, my LBC colleague, the Shadow Foreign Secretary and Labour MP for Tottenham, David Lammy, has given us his reaction to what we've been hearing over the past 48 hours.
On this occasion, Boris Johnson has run away, thrown his toys outside the pram. He has blamed the committee, even though there's a Tory majority on the committee. He hasn't allowed Parliament to have a vote as to whether they disagree or agree with the committee and what should happen as a consequence. Remember, he's got an inbuilt 80-seat majority in Parliament, and by the way, it's very likely that many of those MPs would vote and support Boris Johnson. Hasn't allowed any of that. He has deliberately moved to undermine the system. Undermine the system whereby standards are drawn up. Undermine the system whereby we are absolutely clear that you cannot be lying in public life, and there have to be standards.
Beechcraft X-ray Golf Sierra.
And that's important because it means that when a parliamentarian is in the chamber
Belfast
communicating
Beechcraft
something
Alpha
about
Sierra
a set
X-ray
of
Golf
policies,
Sierra request taxi to
you
parking.
might disagree passionately with what Suella Braverman is saying on asylum and refugees, but you know that she means it, which is why it's so scary, by the way, but that's another story. Is it the case now that he says he's not running, that integrity is returning to our system and to our democracy? Or is it simply the case that he continues to erode our democracy? Because here he's eroding a committee, he's describing it as a kangaroo court, and worse, Jacob
Taxiing to General
Rees-Mogg
Aviation
in
Parking via
today's
taxiway
papers
Alpha Alpha
is
2 cross
saying
runway
that he
04
mustn't be
Tango
blocked
Beechcraft
from
X-ray
standing
Golf Sierra.
again. So is he in fact coming back? We've had 3 resignations. We may get another one by the time Parliament's back tomorrow morning. A deliberate attempt to undermine. And by the way, we're in a very unusual situation here. Most times when there are by-elections, I was elected in a by-election in the year 2000 in Tottenham, it is because a member of Parliament has passed away or taken very sick and has had to stand down rapidly. Or it's the unusual situation in which there has been serious wrongdoing and the MP has had to leave their post. This is a situation in which we're now going to get a set of by-elections effectively because we've got individuals who are expecting to be on a grubby honours list and to go into the seat to the House of Lords. That is not now happening. So we have elections in Uxbridge, Selby and Mid-Bedfordshire purely to make a political point, which none of the people in those constituencies were anticipating. And now, presumably, they'll have to go to the ballot and select new MPs. Unprecedented.
That's my LBC colleague, the Shadow Foreign Secretary and Labour MP for Tottenham, David Lammy, giving us his reaction there. So, Labour and David's party leader, Sir Keir Starmer, calling for a general election. Well, they have also been saying today about the cost of living crisis. They've released figures suggesting average mortgage holders across the UK are paying an extra £7,000 a year. The party's criticised the Conservatives for what they called their reckless economic gamble after interest rates rose following September's mini-budget. The government says it is focused on halving inflation and says Labour can't be trusted on the economy. Well, let's find out more about what loan deals have been looking like with the senior economist at Nationwide, Andrew Harvey. Good afternoon, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Rachel.
So, how is it looking for your customers at the moment, then?
Well, the mortgage market environment is certainly becoming a lot more challenging for borrowers at the moment. What we have seen, certainly in the last few weeks, is quite a considerable increase in new borrowing costs. And that is a reflection of market expectations where interest rates are likely to go in the future. So what we have been seeing is an upward repricing in 2 and 5 year fixed rate mortgage deals. And that's because markets now expect bank rate will need to be increased to a higher level, potentially to around 5.5%, and stay at a higher level for longer. And that reflects ongoing concerns around the level of inflation and how much monetary tightening is going to be required in order to bring that back towards target over the longer term.
And so are we likely to see these payments going up again in the future?
Certainly in the short term, yes, there's a definite risk we will be seeing mortgage payments increase further. What we had been seeing up until quite recently, actually, is mortgage rates had started to come down. We had a lot of market turbulence, of course, around the mini-budget last autumn, which resulted in a big increase in typical borrowing costs and mortgage payments. And we had been seeing some signs of improvement, but over the last few weeks or so, unfortunately, things have turned the corner in a negative sense. And yeah, it will be likely that the borrowers will be needing to pay more per month. And this also affects borrowers who are looking to refinance as well. So it's not just about new customers who are looking to buy a house, it's also around those who are remortgaging. And for those customers, for example, we expect them to be paying around £200 to £250 more per month compared to the rates they were rolling off, for example.
So what do you recommend for people then, particularly if they're coming off their 2 or 5 year mortgages right now? They're just essentially trapped in this cycle of paying more money.
Unfortunately, yes. For many, it does mean they will be needing to find more money per month in order to get those payments. And there are a number of sort of things to consider, I guess, in these circumstances. Most of the borrowers who are rolling off these deals will have been stress tested at the time they took out that mortgage. That means lenders will have made sure they were able to afford these types of increases in their repayments. So for the vast majority should be able to cope, but it's definitely going to be quite a big squeeze on their cash flow. So it's well worth borrowers shopping around, talking to their lender or talking to a mortgage broker perhaps, and to get an idea of the best sort of deals available to suit their circumstances. For some borrowers, that might mean waiting to see what happens. For others, they might want the certainty of locking in, what the current 5 year fixed rates are, for example.
But of course, I mean, we're in a cost of living crisis. Purses are already being squeezed quite tightly at the moment.
Yes, very much so. And with the continued high inflation, especially in things like food prices, for example, is certainly hitting households really hard at the moment. And the Bank of England expect the aggregate in this to continue, and that will be one of the things which actually leads to weaker economic growth over the next year or so, as more borrowers, do come to refinance their mortgages. Because a lot of borrowers, of course, are now on fixed rate mortgages, so around 85% of the stock are on fixed rates. So it takes quite a long time actually for the payment impact to impact all of the borrowers who currently have a mortgage.
Do we have any good news for people out there?
Well, in terms, certainly in our thinking, we do expect that over the medium term, the mortgage rates are likely to start coming down again into the future. And we expect this will happen once bank rate does hit its peak. We think market expectations will then start to adjust and start to price in actually bank rates needing to come down in the future as the economy slows. So it's looking tight in the short term, but over the medium term, we're still relatively confident that conditions will start to improve and we will start to see the impact, the lower mortgage rates starting to come through again.
Always good to end on a positive note. Thank you very much, Andrew Harvey, Senior Economist at Nationwide there on these figures from the Labour Party suggesting average mortgage holders across the UK paying an extra £7,000 a year.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
I'm going to bring you some more on this breaking news that we've had in the past half an hour. 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. Guy Stewart has the latest for LBC News.
There's a video on social media published by local reporters that appears to show a 3-deck boat engulfed in flames and thick smoke. In that clip, a dinghy with a number of passengers on board is being floated away from the stationary vessel. It's being reported around 30 people were on it at the time when the blaze broke out, and that it was caused by an electrical fire. It's thought the boat left Port Galib on June the 6th and had been due to return today. A Foreign Office spokesperson says it's in contact with local authorities following the incident on what they're calling a dive boat near Marsa Alam, and it's supporting British nationals involved.
Thank you very much, Guy Stewart, bringing us the latest there. We'll, of course, bring you any more on this story as we get it.
LBC News.
Now, we have been hearing of thunderstorm warnings. We've seen the hottest day of the year so far yesterday, 32 degrees recorded in Surrey, but now we can't have it all, can we? Thunderstorms on the way. The Met Office has been issuing new weather warnings, 4 yellow thunderstorm warnings in place from midday tomorrow till 9 o'clock, covering parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. A yellow warning for rain starts before then for southern parts of England and Wales at 7 o'clock tonight through till tomorrow morning. Now, these yellow warnings mean thunderstorms and rain could bring disruption with potential flooding and also difficult driving conditions. So that we're hearing the latest from the Met Office.
This is LBC News.
And I've just seen some pictures of Superstars Manchester City, the winning squad of the Champions League and that elusive treble. They are now the champions of the Champions League, Premier League and the FA Cup. I've just seen some pictures of them getting onto the team bus. They are heading for the airport, heading home for a hero's welcome after yesterday's spectacular win in the final, 1-0 over Inter Milan. Midfielder Rodri got the decisive goal in the second half. Now, prepare yourself, this is the sound of fans in Manchester celebrating. Absolute elation from Man City fans there. I'm sure a few sore heads this morning as well. We're going to hear more from our reporter who was in Istanbul, was at the match last night. A little bit more on that to come later in the programme. But up next here on LBC News, we're going to bring you the very latest news headlines.
LBC News. Weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It'll feel murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
This is LBC News.
The ministerial code is clear that you have to separate out your private interests from your public duties.
They want to talk about this because it distracts from the fact that they voted against tougher sentences for paedophiles.
Stories like this goes to the heart of the narrative that it's one rule for them and one rule for us.
Where the news never stops.
The car rolled almost slowly into the gates of Downing Street.
Listen on Global Player, LBC News.
Your heart is precious. Help us protect it. British Heart Foundation is dedicated to keeping hearts beating, and since we began, the number of yearly deaths from heart and circulatory diseases in Northern Ireland has almost halved. Today, we're funding pioneering research at Queen's University Belfast, looking into the body's ability to regrow blood vessels to help develop treatments that could save lives where you live. To find out more and support our life-saving work, search BHF Northern Ireland.
Could get broadband stops and starts. Or
full fibre super reliable broadband that gives you all the speeds you need for online shopping, designer gear swapping, holiday booking and fakeaway cooking, battling mates, swiping dates, speedy streaming, work from home, teaming on hundreds of devices so you can forget buffering, freezing, glitching or arguing. Get all this on the UK's most reliable broadband technology and win at staying in with BT. Full fibre 30% UK availability, terms apply.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to win big on the National Lottery?
Just to confirm, are you somewhere you're able to talk at the moment? Yes, we're at home. Lovely. I've just checked the ticket and I can confirm you are now millionaires. No!
Yes!
How much have we won? £1 million!
Imagine that. It could be you. The National Lottery. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Susie won the Dyson Air-Up that she's been after for ages. Michael bagged an Xbox with FIFA 23, and Erica is a massive £10,000 richer. At Win Plus, we create winner after winner, with chances to win the latest tech, unforgettable experiences, and huge cash prizes. What could you win? Enter now at winplus.co.uk. Great prizes, real winners. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
LBC News.
Get ready for that winning feeling with Win Plus. Enter now to win tech, cash and loads more at winplus.co.uk. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
With the new Morrison's More card, there's more points when you fill up with fuel, more points when you shop, and 5,000 points gets you a £5. That's a £5 voucher to spend on your shop. Download the Morrison's More app today.
Morrison's to shop at Morrison's.
Majority of stores subject to availability. See online for full T's and C's.
You make the moments that matter. We just send the flowers. Order before 9 p.m. for next weekday delivery at singflowers.com. See website for details.
If I need an eye test, I don't go to Specsavers.
One thing you won't see at Specsavers is me.
Do I go? Yes! I mean, no. Me, I don't go to Specsavers. Nor you, Spike.
Should have gone to Specsavers. No.
Hi, Specsavers, here for your eye test.
They come to me instead.
Come in, kettle's on.
If you can't go to Specsavers unaccompanied, we could come to you. See if you're eligible at specsavers.co.uk/home visits.
Does your broadband slither around your home? And at peak times, do things feel a little constricted? Well, not when you get full fiber broadband from EE. You get the peak time speeds you pay for. Count on EE, full fiber broadband, powered by BT.
Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage.
News, sport, travel, weather in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it is 12:39. Very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Garish. There are now calls for general elections. The Conservatives face a civil war. 3 by-elections are triggered by the resignation of Tory MPs in just 24 hours, including, of course, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We've been hearing in the past hour 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. Labour says last year's mini budget means homeowners are having to spend an extra £7,000 a year on their mortgage. And thunderstorms are now expected after yesterday's hottest day of the year. They'll start tonight in the south of England and Wales before hitting most of the UK tomorrow.
LBC News. Travel.
In Hampshire, the M3 remains closed northbound for weekend roadworks between Junction 5 for Hook and 4A at Farnborough. On the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire is queuing towards an accident between Junction 11A for Dunstable and 11 at Dunstable South. And in West Yorkshire, there are long delays on the M62 westbound from Junction 29 at Lofthouse to 28 at Tingley, as one lane is closed to recover a multi-vehicle accident. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Gerrish. LBC News Time coming up to 1:45 on this Sunday afternoon. Just going to bring you some more information on that breaking story that we've had in the past hour. A search is now underway for 3 missing British passengers after a diving boat caught fire in the Red Sea off of Egypt's coast, according to officials. 12 tourists were rescued from the boat in Marsa Alam. Local officials said it was carrying 15 Brits, 10 crew members and 2 guides. Footage on social media appeared to show the boat almost entirely engulfed in flames and smoke. The Foreign Office says it's in contact with local authorities and it's supporting the British nationals involved. We'll, of course, bring the very latest on this as we get any more information.
LBC News.
And let's turn our attention back to the latest Tory psychodrama. The Cabinet Minister saying the world's moved on from the drama of Boris Johnson following his resignation as an MP last week. Grant Shapps says the country has excellent leadership in Rishi Sunak. 2 close allies have followed Mr Johnson, triggering 3 by-elections for the Conservatives to defend another headache for the Prime Minister. Well, Guto Harry was Downing Street Communications Director for Boris Johnson. He's given us some insight into what might have made the former PM resign from his seat.
I think what he's done is take charge this weekend of a situation that was out of his control and drifting, inevitably towards a very, very unhappy and undignified sort of conclusion. And so, if you like, he's gone jumping in, waving Union Jacks, if you like, rather than be dragged kicking and screaming out of Parliament. And though I won't join those who openly criticise the process and all that, I do understand why he feels understandably aggrieved by the process that has not only taken him out of office, stopped him being Prime Minister, but now hounded him out of politics. Because, as you rightly said, he is a man who defied political gravity and only a couple of years ago, a few years ago, won the biggest majority for 40 years. And so I think those people who voted Conservative, most of them having never contemplated voting Conservative before, it was very much a personalised Boris-branded pitch at the last election, will feel aggrieved that the man who they wanted as Prime Minister is now not even in Parliament, not to mention in number 10.
Guto Harry, Downing Street Communications Director under Boris Johnson there. Also produces a cracking podcast on Global Player, which you can find right now. Let's also get some more reaction to this. Well, Tim Bale is Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University of London. He's author of the book The Conservative Party After Brexit. He's told LBC News the Conservative Party's been in a perma-crisis.
He has the power, technically, to prevent Boris Johnson from getting on the candidates list and therefore being selected by another constituency. That might cause some problems across the Conservative Party because there is, as I say, some support for Boris Johnson. Nevertheless, I think I would say that Rishi Sunak might now, as some people suggest, have to grow a backbone and actually ensure that Boris Johnson disappears from politics. It'll be brutal, but it might be necessary. Labour have been in the lead now for quite some time, and their lead is consistently around 14-15%, and that is plenty, really, in terms of winning a general election. Not necessarily, some would say, as a party with a big majority, but certainly as the largest party. And of course, the Liberal Democrats would probably support a Labour government, either in coalition or more likely in some sort of supply agreement. So I think the opposition are sitting fairly pretty at the moment, although obviously they can't be complacent.
Tim Bale, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University of London, author of the book The Conservative Party after Brexit.
This is LBC News.
So Labour now calling for a general election after the events of the past 48 hours or so, but also releasing new data today saying that homeowners are spending an extra £7,000 a year in mortgage payments compared to this time 2 years ago. The Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, blamed what he called the reckless gamble by the Conservatives in last year's mini-budget. The government says it is committed to halving inflation this year. Well, Mr McFadden's been speaking to LBC News.
We've put out some calculations today showing that someone paying a mortgage, a typical mortgage now, is paying £7,000 a year more in interest than they would have been a couple of years ago. And a significant chunk of the reason for that is because of the booster rocket put under mortgage rates last September with the Conservatives' mini-budget. And the problem with that event is that it wasn't a one-off because people are coming off 2 or 5 year mortgage rates every month and are meeting increases in bills of hundreds of pounds a month. So this is an ongoing problem for people, and it doesn't actually just affect mortgage holders, it affects renters too, because they're renting from landlords who also have mortgages. So we're seeing an increase in rent payments and rental demands all as a result of this. That was the worst possible time to have a Conservative mini-budget like that, to engage in a set of spending that wasn't even just a one-off, but was going to be year on year forever. And so what the mini-budget did was it really underlined the irresponsibility of the whole thing. In fact, I remember doing media interviews on the day that all that was announced and saying, look, interest rates are already going up, so this is the worst possible time to do a mini-budget like this. But they went ahead and did it.
Belfast
So it's not
Beechcraft Alpha
that
Sierra
there
X-ray
isn't
Golf Sierra
more than
is
one
type
factor.
Beechcraft
It's
B58 1
precisely
miles
because
northeast
there
of
were other
Belfast,
factors.
300 feet.
This was the most
Request flight
irresponsible
following.
time to do something like that, and people are still paying the price for it.
Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden there, speaking about Labour's research that homeowners spending an extra £7,000 a year in mortgage payments compared to 2 years ago. From the other side of the bench with Grant Shapps, the Energy Secretary, a little bit later in the programme.
LBC News.
Roger Beechcraft X-ray Golf Sierra.
A man has been charged with the murders of a married couple whose bodies were found at a house in Newhaven.
Request clearance to
The
transition
64-year-old
Charlie
Derek
airspace.
Martin is due to appear in court tomorrow. LBC News' James Hoxie has more.
Police were called to a property in Newhaven on Friday night, just after 7 p.m. They found the bodies
Cleared
of a
for
man
Charlie
and a woman
airspace,
inside,
Beechcraft,
both in
X-ray
their
Golf Sierra.
30s. Detectives say they are still trying to establish exactly what happened, but say they're not looking for anyone else. They've also asked the public not to speculate or comment on anything which could, as they say, jeopardise the investigation. A post-mortem is set to take place next week. Police say they won't be releasing any more details in the meantime. What we do know is that Derek Martin, a 64-year-old man from Brighton, has been charged with 2 counts of murder and is set to appear in court tomorrow.
Thank you very much. James Hoxie reporting for LBC News.
This is LBC News.
Now to strikes, and staff working to process driving licences and vehicle tax renewals are walking out today. Starting their strike action, the members of the PCS union are in a row over pay, pensions and working conditions. They'll be taking 15 days of action. Sarah Evans from the union has told LBC News it's not being taken lightly, though.
We can fully understand that people are going to face delays and they're not going to be happy about it. However, we have been put in a desperate situation. We don't call industrial action lightly. Nobody wants to disappoint the customers that we have. We're here to deliver a service and we want to do that to the best of our ability. But unfortunately, for years now, we have been ignored with our pleas to have a decent pay rise. And if the government would just, offer us what they're offering other sectors, we know that the money's there to give us a decent pay rise, but for some reason they don't want to pay it. So I would say that, please don't point your anger at us and to the staff that we have. If you're bringing in the guys that answer the phone, things like that, just, point the blame where it lands, which is at the government. feet. They're quick enough to spend millions and billions of public money on things that just are of no use to anyone. You know, they could have looked after themselves and feed the pockets of their friends, whilst we get left just with nothing. And that's what we're hoping that the public will see, that we are doing this out of desperation, and it really is our last hope.
That's Sarah Evans from the PCS union. Well, the UK government says it is holding regular talks with the union, but says big pay rises will prolong the cost of living crisis. Of course, we've heard of lots of industrial action across many different sectors, and the leader of a group of junior doctors has refused to apologise to patients ahead of more walkouts this week. The actions are taking place in England for 3 days from Wednesday in this long-running row over pay. Dr Rob Lawrenson, the BMA, the British Medical Association's Junior Doctors Committee Chair, says his members don't want to have to do this.
Government's offer, which was 5% and £1,500, was nothing that began to even restore the pay erosion, and in fact would have led to another real terms pay cut. And I'm afraid that there will be some disruption in elective and outpatient care for patients.
Ministers previously called demands for a 35% pay rise unreasonable. And 4 out of 5 employers reportedly think the current wave of nationwide strikes should be resolved by independent mediation. That's according to the conciliation service ACAS, which has surveyed more than 1,000 senior staff. ACAS's Director of Dispute Resolution, Kate Novici, says this research didn't include the unions. She was speaking to LBC News a little bit earlier.
This was a survey that was done specifically of employers, and I think the really good news from an ACAS point of view is it simply reflects the fact that employers are demonstrating through this survey that they're aware of the value of that third-party independent assistant if it's needed to get folks out of a tricky corner when they're in a dispute situation. It's not always easy to resolve these issues. It requires a great deal of thorough work, thoughtful work, considered effort on all parts. Everyone involved really is there to dig deep and to put aside perhaps some of the things that happened in the past and to be really focused on the future. And I think that's something that's difficult to understand unless you're in the room with these situations. So yes, not always ezy, but a great success rate from our point of view in getting people over the finish line in the end.
X-ray Golf Sierra.
Once we've got them round
Scottish
the
Centre
round the
Beechcraft
table
Alpha
to
Sierra
really
X-ray
address
Golf
it.
Sierra 9,100 feet.
From ACAS, she's the Director of Dispute Resolution. Much more on all the latest strike action on our website lbc.co.uk.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Now we're hearing more hot weather is on the way, but not before some thunderstorms as well. The UK Health Security Agency issued an amber alert for hot weather till 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday for much of the UK. Of course, yesterday saw the highest temperatures of the year so far in England and Scotland, so 32 degrees on the thermometers. And I've been hearing from the Met Office as well that we've got these yellow thunderstorm warnings in place from tomorrow. Yellow warnings in place as well for rain for the south of England and Wales starting tonight. So pretty mixed bag. It's going to be hot and wet. Well, we've also been hearing from dermatologist Dr. Hiva Fasihi. She said lots of people need to wear sun cream, wear hats and avoid sun at the hottest times of the day to try and avoid this UV radiation that can cause skin cancer. She said that most people do not put on enough sun cream.
You're supposed to wear your sunscreen 2 milligrams per centimetre square on the skin. And if you really look at how people do this, most of us manage only a quarter of that. So apply it as generously as you can manage. And occasionally I say to people, apply it once and then apply it a second time just to make sure you haven't missed any bit.
LBC News.
Now we've seen pictures of Erling Haaland and the rest of the Manchester City squad getting onto a bus to head back to the UK to a hero's welcome in Manchester after winning their first Champions League title. And of course that means they did it, they won the treble. They are the Premier League champions. They won the FA Cup last week, and now last night, thanks to that 1-0 win over Inter Milan in the final in Istanbul, they are the Champions League champions. Pep Guardiola, the City boss, says things could have easily gone against them, but it was written in the stars.
The chances they had to save, go an extra time and you can lose the game. And I will be the same person,
Going to
we'll be the same team, we'll be the same club.
Beechcraft X-Ray Golf
Today
Sierra.
was our year, what in the
Scottish
past
Centre,
we'll do it, of course,
Beechcraft
very
Alpha
proud,
Sierra
satisfied
X-Ray Golf
with
Sierra
something unique, the
10,000
travel for this club.
Well, LBC News reporter Chris Chambers was at the match in Istanbul.
It's all over in Istanbul, and Manchester City have won the Champions League, and with it have completed the treble.
Brilliant. Man City just won in Europe. Champions, treble winners.
Fantastic. The team's just fantastic.
130.85 Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra.
So
Belfast approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra 10,000 feet.
It's a dream come true for us all.
I've not cried before like that.
Tears, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I was there for the FA Cup final, I was there for the Premier League win, and now to be in Istanbul to see City lift those big ears. It's great, come on! Ilkay Gündoğan receives the trophy. He steps into the middle of the crowd of players on the podium. Ilkay Gündoğan thrusts the
Going to 119.875 Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra. Scottish Centre, Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra 10,000 feet.
Fantastic. Go City!
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Scottish Centre Q&A.
Emotion. 60 years a City fan, and over the moon. I've aged like 50 years in that second half watching it. Ecstatic. Everything you dreamed of following City, that. Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely ecstatic, mate.
130.85 for Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra.
We've done it.
Belfast approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra 10,000 feet.
Over the blue moon. They chased down Arsenal to win the Premier League. They beat Manchester United at Wembley to win the FA Cup. And they've beaten Inter here in Istanbul to become champions of Europe. It's finished Manchester City 1, Inter Milan 0.
LBC News reporter Chris Chambers there at Turk Stadium in Istanbul. Very lucky boy, got to watch the Champions League final. And of course, bring you the latest on this as we see that the Man City squad are on their way home. We're expecting a hero's welcome. They're going to be doing the big open-top bus parade through the streets of Manchester tomorrow. As we get it, and Novak Djokovic also on the verge of history. He's going for a third French Open tennis title this afternoon. Victory over Casper Ruud in the final, and making a 23-time Grand Slam singles champion an outright men's record. Of course, bringing the very latest on that. It's due to start in the next hour or so. So LBC News at 1 o'clock. We've got the latest news headlines.
LBC News weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England, with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It will form murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
LBC News.
I've lost my car keys. Lost the car once in a multi-story. Lost my patience, my hair. Lost that a while back. But this week I found things I thought had gone forever. The crackle of needle on vinyl, the tst of a fizzy drink, leaves crunching. I found them all at Specsavers. Got hearing aids from £495 and Bosch. Those sounds are back. So is joie de vivre. You're better off with Specsavers. Book a free hearing test today. Still can't find those keys though.
Did you know at Morrison's Cafe you can get 2 full breakfasts and hot drinks for just a tenner? So that's more post-shop pit stops to look forward to. Morrison's to shop at Morrison's. Majority of stores subject to availability. £5.99 each.
Are rising costs forcing you into unaffordable debt? An individual voluntary arrangement from Credit Fix could help. Write off up to 81% of your unsecured debt with manageable repayments and your interest and charges frozen. With over 14,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, Credit Fix could help you to a brighter financial future. Just text DEBT to 66777. Text DEBT to 66777 now. Terms apply. Minutes suitable for all. Can I take credit rating? Free advice on health.org.uk.
If you bought a timeshare, did you really get what you expected? Or were you sold a dream that's now a nightmare? With high maintenance fees, loss of exclusivity, and limited availability, timeshare ownership for many is now just a liability. MyTimeshareClaim.co.uk has helped thousands of owners who are missold exit their contract and receive compensation. For advice and to find out more about your options, text timeshare to 78900.
LBC News. The latest news headlines. Next.
Looking for a great broadband deal? Well, Sky Broadband have you covered. Right now, they're slicing their prices in half. So you can get Ultrafast Plus broadband at the incredible price of just £24 a month until the end of 2023. Then £48 a month on an 18-month contract. What's more, there's no upfront fees. Don't miss out. Switch today at sky.com. Ends 15th of June, £24 a month till 31st of December 2023. £48 after offer period. Prices may change. Average download speed 500 megabits per second. Select fibre areas only.
On your radio, on Global Play, and
Play LBC News.
where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it is 1 minute past 1. Very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Garish. 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. Bringing the latest on this as we get it. There are now calls for a general election as the Conservatives face a civil war. 3 by-elections have been triggered by the resignation of Tory MPs in just 24 hours, including former Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Boris was perfectly entitled to remain as a MP. He has decided to stand down, and a couple of my other colleagues. The world has moved on.
Labour says last year's mini-budget means homeowners are spending an extra £7,000 a year on their mortgages.
People are coming off 2 or 5 year mortgage rates every month, and they're meeting increases in bills of hundreds of pounds a month.
And thunderstorms are now expected after yesterday's hottest day of the year. They'll start tonight in the south of England and Wales, before hitting most of the UK tomorrow. It is still very warm.
LBC News. Weather.
Hot and humid for most. Further thunderstorms are also likely with highs of 30 degrees. I'm David Don and I've got the full forecast in the next 15 minutes.
LBC News. Travel.
The M3 in Hampshire remains closed northbound for weekend roadworks between Junction 5 for Hookham 4A at Farnborough. On the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire, there are long delays towards an accident between Junction 11A for Dunstable and 11 at Dunstable South. In West Yorkshire, traffic is being held on the M62 westbound between Junction 29 for Lofthouse and 28 at Tingley to recover a multi-vehicle accident. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Gerrich. LBC News time 3 minutes past 1 on this Sunday afternoon. We've been hearing that 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. A search now underway to find them. Guy Stewart has the latest for LBC News.
There's a video on social media published by local reporters that appears to show a 3-deck boat engulfed in flames and thick smoke. In that clip, a dinghy with a number of passengers on board is being floated away from the stationary vessel. It's being reported around 30 people were on it at the time when the blaze broke out, and that it was caused by an electrical fire. It's thought the boat left Port Galib on June the 6th and had been due to return today. A Foreign Office spokesperson says it's in contact with local authorities following the incident on what they're calling a dive boat near Marsa Alam, and it's supporting British nationals involved.
Thank you very much, Guy Stewart, reporting for LBC News. We'll, of course, bring you the very latest on this as we get more information.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer is demanding a general election to allow people to vote on what he claims are 13 years of Conservative failures. Of course, this follows the spectacular resignation on Friday night of Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, and 2 of his close allies, after he criticised the Privileges report into Partygate. He called it a witch hunt and a kangaroo court. We'll Conservative political commentator Reem Ibrahim's told LBC News for most voters, rows over things like the honours list won't be important, but the public image of the party will.
It feels as though the party was never in his control in the first place. I mean, I think that when we're looking at the leadership election last year, we had Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, who both gave very different definitions of what conservatism meant. Boris Johnson, again, I mean, we had the highest tax burden in 70 years. You had huge amounts of differing ideological standpoints. And now looking back at the way that the party has really sort of behaved over the past few years, it's felt as though there haven't really been that kind of clear direction at all. And it looks as though Sunak is now sort of trying to rein in a lot of that support for himself as well. But it doesn't feel as though he's ever really had control.
Conservative political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Well, Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for Energy Security, has been doing the media rounds this morning. He thinks his party can move on from what's been described as soapbox opera.
I think people around the country, inside and outside the party, will recognise that Boris is somebody with many qualities. But we are now in a world where there are different challenges to face, and we've got new management in number 10 getting on with the job and getting on with the priorities of this country, like growing the economy and stopping the small boats, where we've seen some success. So I think the world has sort of moved on from what was quite a dramatic period under Brexit and, of course, under the issues related to COVID and the vaccine and the rest of it.
So do you think the world's moved on from Boris Johnson?
Okay, just factually speaking, Boris Johnson's no longer Prime Minister. And, as I say, I think people appreciate, I like Boris Johnson. I worked under his administration. He had successes, many successes to his name, including breaking the Brexit impasse and including getting this country vaccinated first. But there was also always a lot of drama that came with all of that. The world has moved on, not least because of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the high levels of inflation that created, and so things like fighting inflation and growing the economy, and the things that Rishi Sunak is focused on now, and has himself having some success with things like reducing the number of small boats.
Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for Energy Security, there doing the morning media rounds, speaking to Sophie Reg on Sky a little bit earlier. So Labour now demanding a general election. They've also released figures today saying that homeowners are paying an extra £7,000 a year on the average mortgage, saying that the interest rates have trebled since 2021. Well, joining me now in the studio is LBC News reporter Amelia Cox. Amelia, already in a cost of living crisis. This doesn't sound good, does it?
Yes, outside that Tory psychodrama, as it's being called, Labour are also trying to score points with pledges and promises for if they were to take office in a few years' time. They say rising interest rates amount effectively to a Tory mortgage penalty, blaming last year's mini-budget. Now, to break those figures down, analysis by Labour suggests that the average household is spending an extra £150 a week since the autumn. That works out to be around £220 in interest payments alone on people's mortgages. Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury has described the autumn's financial statement as a reckless economic gamble. Pat McFadden explains how his party would try to fix it.
The solution has to be financial stability for the long term. That's what we want to ensure. The lesson from the experience last September should be that any future government has to put financial stability first, has to make sure that it matches ambition with responsibility, and that's what will characterise our approach.
Now, the government hasn't responded to this analysis specifically, but they claim that Labour can't be trusted with the economy. The Tory spokesperson says that Labour would have to resort to unlimited borrowing and hiking up taxes to fund plans that they put forward. Now, how does this mud-flowing actually really help homeowners? Well, there is some good news. Senior economist at Nationwide, Andrew Harvey, has been speaking to us this week.
Well, in terms of certainly in our thinking, we do expect that over the medium term, the mortgage rates are likely to start coming down again into the future. And we expect this will happen once bank rate does hit its peak. We think market expectations will then start to adjust and start to price in actually bank rates needing to come down in the future as the economy slows. So So if we tighten in the short term, but over the medium term, we're still relatively confident conditions will start to improve and we will start to see the impact of lower mortgage rates starting to come through.
Nationwide, Andrew Harvey, who was speaking to me a little bit earlier in the programme here on LBC News. Thank you very much for the report. LBC News reporter Amelia Cox. Got much more on this at lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC News.
In other news today, we have been hearing Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister claiming that Russia's moving its most combat-ready units from the Kherson region after the destruction of that dam. We've seen the footage of massive amounts of water flooding the local area. The Ukrainians blame Moscow's forces for those blasts, which caused the water to absolutely decimate low-lying areas. The Kremlin insists the responsibility is Kyiv's. Intelligence officer Philip Ingram explains his latest Ukrainian troop movement claims and say that water means President Zelensky's troops can't cross the Dnipro River.
Therefore, that gives the Russians, frees up all of the troops that they've got protecting that huge area in Kherson and gives them the chance to move up to the areas where the Ukrainians are starting their land counteroffensive and probing into.
That's former intelligence officer Philip Ingram there. And the conflicts in Ukraine to come throughout the programme here on LBC News.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Now, it's been very hot, we know that. Yesterday, the hottest day of the year so far, which was 32 degrees recorded in Surrey. Well, now, we can't have it all. The Met Office has issued new weather alerts into tomorrow, this time for thunderstorms covering parts of all four nations until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. For rain, runs from 7 o'clock tonight, though, into tomorrow morning for southern parts of England and Wales. Still, though, we are expecting very hot temperatures despite the thunderstorms. As we've been counting for LBC News, they're loving the heat.
Well, I'm looking forward to 40 degrees like we had last week. Maybe for a day or two.
Well, next week's going to be 25-30 degrees, so everyone's happy when the sun's out.
Foster's care home liaison manager in Weybridge said they know how dangerous warm weather can be for the vulnerable.
For our residents, we can keep an eye on them. We can obviously we offer drinks. We've got hydration stations everywhere. Iced lollies, ice creams, iced melon as well. Anything that they want to be able to get them through this hot period.
We'll bring you the latest weather forecast in the next few minutes, but of course we cannot but mention last night's spectacular win for Manchester City. They did it, they got the treble, so not only are they the champions of the Premier League and also the FA Cup winners, but they are now the champions of Europe, winning the Champions League for the first time thanks to that 1-0 victory over Inter Milan in the final in Istanbul. These City fans who were at the match told us it was a long time coming.
I've dreamed of this all my life. 59-year-old, been going home and away since 76. Crying my eyes out there.
60 years a City fan and over the moon. I've aged like 50 years in that second half watching it. This is the best trip I've ever been on, and I'll be back every year as a pilgrimage to Rodri.
Not all fans have been especially pleased, though. Some fans who were at the match last night have told LBC News there was chaos before and after the game. Many had problems getting to and from the Ataturk Stadium and are blaming UEFA. Alex Brotherton has been speaking to LBC News.
So that 90 minutes was absolutely incredible experience. Something City fans that were in the Ataturk Stadium are not going to forget for the rest of their lives. But apart from that 90 minutes, the chaos before and after the game was an absolute shambles. You could tell that the organisation from UEFA, the local authorities, was just not up to standard. Like, people got to the stadium and City fans were being funneled through a coach park to get to their end of the ground. There was railings up in place, funneling fans through quite small passages, which at one point was looking like it could escalate to a bit of a crush situation. Unfortunately, fans pushed the barriers down and people were able to avoid the bottleneck, but that was a pretty scary experience. And then after the game, just absolutely ridiculous. So there were UEFA supplied shuttle buses to get from the fan park or the transport hub in Istanbul out to the stadium, which is about 30 kilometres away. And yeah, after the game, they just didn't appear to be any. There was thousands of City fans queuing. Didn't seem to be any buses. It turned out there was buses, but they couldn't get into the Ataturk Stadium car park.
That's Alex Brotherton, a Manchester City fan who wasn't best pleased with last night's organisation. As he's told us, we have approached UEFA for a response to this. And of course, we'll continue to reflect. The champions of Europe, Manchester City. We've seen footage of the squad getting onto the team bus, heading to the airport as they get ready to come home to a hero's welcome in Manchester. We're going to see the big open-top bus parade tomorrow through the streets of the city. But of course, they're bringing the latest from that as we get it. But for now, just time to quickly touch on the tennis. Novak Djokovic could be about to make history starting in the next hour. He can statistically become the greatest men's tennis player of all time by winning the French Open. Victory over Casper Ruud in the final will take him to an outright record of 23 Grand Slam singles titles, one more than Rafa Nadal. That's moving halfway towards winning the calendar slam of all 4 major trophies in a year. Djokovic trying not to look too far ahead, though.
Experience on my side, but does it win matches? I don't think so. I just have to recover
Ronald's
well,
Way approach
be
Beach Craft
prepared
Alpha Sierra X-Ray
for
Golf
another
Sierra
long battle.
10,000 feet.
You know, after the finals, if I win, let's talk about history.
Of course, history indeed. We'll be following that with great interest throughout the afternoon here on LBC News. But next, the latest news headlines.
LBC News weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It'll feel murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
LBC News.
Our minds can wander while brushing our teeth, thinking up weekend plans, considering what's for lunch in the work canteen. But have you ever wondered if you could be brushing better? Achieve an exceptional clean with Philips Sonicare without any extra effort. That's up to 20 times more effective than a manual toothbrush. Find out more at philips.co.uk/Sonicare. There's always a way to make life better. Innovation. And you. Philips.
At Tesco Mobile, you can bag the incredible iPhone 14 with the most impressive dual camera system on iPhone. Plus, you'll get 12 gigs of data, and your contract price will stay frozen at $34.99 a month with club card prices, saving you £126. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
And 16th of July was $38.49. Club card and 36-month credit agreement required. Subject to status of availability. Club card price frozen for contract duration. Terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
Albert Einstein here. Chico and I are out for walkies in the park. My watch tells me we've walked exactly 3,004 steps, our personal best. Our steps aren't the only thing we track. Our smart meter display at home tells us how much energy we use daily, weekly and monthly, which can help me make changes to save energy. And now my watch tells me it's time to head back for a cuppa. Right, Chico?
For extra help managing your household budgets, search Get a Smart Meter today. Consumer action required. Eligibility may vary.
Does your broadband slither around your home? And at peak times, do things feel a little constricted? Well, not when you get full fiber broadband from EE. You get the peak time speeds you pay for. Count on EE. Full fiber broadband. Powered by BT.
Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage.
This is LBC News.
You can't put a price on togetherness or excitement, friendship or achievement. And you can enjoy them even more when you hear every moment. Our best-selling hearing aids are up to £300 off and come with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Book your free hearing check today at bootshearingcare.com. Boots, with you for life.
See bootshearingcare.com for details.
If I need an eye test, I don't go to Specsavers.
One thing you won't see at Specsavers is me.
Do I go? Yes! I mean, no. Me, I don't go to Specsavers. Nor you, eh, Spike?
Should have gone to Specsavers. Nah.
Hi, Specsavers. Here for your eye test.
They come to me instead.
Come in, kettle's on.
If you can't go to Specsavers unaccompanied, we could come to you. See if you're eligible at specsavers.co.uk/home visits.
Does your broadband slither around your home? And at peak times, do things feel a little constricted? Well, not when you get full fiber broadband from EE. You get the peak time speeds you pay for. Count on EE. Full fiber broadband. Powered by BT.
Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage.
The news in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes. 24 hours a day. Where the news never stops. This is LBC News. 118.775%. Papa Juliet.
From Global's newsroom, it is 1:20. Very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Gerrish. The search is now underway for 3 British tourists who are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. Right now calls for a general election as the Conservatives face a civil war. 3 by-elections have been triggered by the resignation of Tory MPs in just 24 hours, including former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. While Labour says last year's mini-budget means homeowners are having to spend an extra £7,000 a year on their mortgage repayments. And thunderstorms are now expected after yesterday's hottest day of the year. Going to start tonight in the south of England and Wales before hitting most of the UK tomorrow.
LBC News. Travel.
The M3 in Hampshire is closed northbound for weekend roadworks between junction 5 for Hook and 4A for Farnborough. On the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire, there are long delays towards an accident between junction 11A for Dunstable and 11 at Dunstable South. In West Yorkshire, it's queuing on the M62 westbound from junction 29 at Lofthouse to 28 at Tingley as 2 lanes remain closed to recover a multi-vehicle accident. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Gerrish. LBC News time. It is 1:22 on this Sunday afternoon. Now we are hearing those 3 British tourists are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. A search is now underway to find them. The Foreign Office is involved in this and said it's working with the families involved. Guy Stewart has more details from LBC News.
There's a video on social media published by local reporters that appears to show a 3-deck boat engulfed in flames and thick smoke. In that clip, a dinghy with a number of passengers on board is being floated away from the stationary vessel. It's being reported around 30 people were on it at the time when the blaze broke out, and that it was caused by an electrical fire. It's thought the boat left Port Galib on June the 6th and had been due to return today. A Foreign Office spokesperson says it's in contact with local authorities following the incident on what they're calling a dive boat near Marsa Alam, and it's supporting British nationals involved.
Thank you very much, Guy Stewart, with the latest there. We'll, of course, keep you up to date as we get any more information on this.
This is LBC News.
Now, after the resignation of 3 Conservative MPs in under 48 hours, including, of course, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak's now facing calls for a general election from Labour's leader. Sir Keir Starmer says Rishi Sunak needs to, in his words, finally find a backbone. Entrepreneur Gina Miller is a transparency campaigner who leads the True and Fair Party. She's told LBC News Mr Johnson's demonstrated the system doesn't work.
It's not actually about one politician or another, or one party or another. It's that we have a system of government and democracy that is so outdated that it doesn't attract the right people. It doesn't have the checks and balances. And that's where we need to start, the systemic failures in our system of government. We have to be honest about it. Because if you get the basically it's a conservative. The opposition party doesn't have a say, and they can do whatever they want when somebody's in power. And, you know, it is a terribly weak system, it's outdated, and it needs to be modernised. We need checks and balances. We need proper legislation. Because a lot of things like the ministerial code need to put into law, prerogative powers need to be put into law. There needs to be so much reform in our machinery of government. And the two main parties are not interested in that because they're old. It's called the good chap, gender, that's what it's called. The good chap model, where you'll get elected and you'll do the right thing. You'll put people first. Just doesn't translate into what happens on a day-to-day basis. Is that once people are in Westminster, it's about power. It's not about the people. And unless, even good politicians, we have lots of good politicians. Let's not lose sight of that. But, somebody like Boris Johnson to rise to the top just shows and exemplifies how weak the system is. And so from my point of view is, let's not spend too much time. Boris never changed. He always had a distant relationship with the truth. He never had any of the personal qualities to be a leader of our country. And the Tory party are going to have to look for themselves as to how they let him rise to the top. We need to have a serious conversation about who it is we choose as our leaders and how we actually put politics back into being the serious business that it is, which is looking after people's lives.
Gina Miller, the Transparency campaigner, who leads the True and Fair Party. I'm going to be hearing more from our reporter James Goodison on LBC News. Very good afternoon to you, James. So lots going on within the Conservative Party.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very interesting, Rachel. Rishi Sunak has broken his silence, as it were. He hasn't actually mentioned anything to do with Boris Johnson. It's all a focus on what he's been doing this week. He's put a number of tweets out saying, whether in Westminster or Washington, I'm focused on your priorities. This week we took action to cut waiting lists, grow the economy and stop the boats. Some of his key pledges, of course, within there. And this resignation from Boris Johnson is very interesting in regards to what exactly it does for Rishi Sunak. There's short-term and long-term pros and cons. Just firstly, Rishi Sunak now doesn't have to worry about a potential vote-splitting Commons session where his own party would effectively, it seems like, have been asked whether or not to suspend Boris Johnson and condemn him to fighting a by-election. That Privileges Committee vote is not going to be happening now because Boris Johnson has resigned. But of course, longer term, he is now facing 3 by-elections while his party trail in the polls a year out from a general election. This morning, we've also been hearing from Government Minister Grant Shapps.
Boris was perfectly entitled to remain as MP. He has decided to stand down, and a couple of my other colleagues, all of whom I should say I work with, and Boris in particular, I liked working with him as Prime Minister. But, as I said right at the beginning of this, the world has moved on. He is the one who's removed himself from the current sort of political scene, standing down as a Member of Parliament, and we've got excellent leadership.
So Grant Shapps there. Now, what's the latest that we're hearing about these by-elections? 3 and counting so far, James?
Absolutely, yeah. Going to be really, really interesting. And just to profile them, they are, of course, Uxbridge, Boris Johnson's seat. It is a marginal seat that's been eyed up by Labour for quite a while. It only has a 7,000 majority. It's, of course, just on the edges of London, which has become something of a Labour bastion over the past 5-10 years or so. So that's going to be a really interesting one. It feels like that's probably going to be lost. But the other two, Mid-Bedfordshire and Selby, which are both Nadine Dorries and Nigel Adams' seats, respectively, those are the two that resign alongside Boris Johnson. They have 20,000 plus majorities, Rachel. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what actually happens there. We've seen big majorities reverse under the Tories in recent years by both Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. Could that potentially happen in those 2 seats? And what kind of pressure will Rishi Sunak be under when it comes to making sure those are retained? It's certainly going to be very, very interesting. And just a word as well, there was a lot of talk about further resignations happening. We're now into Sunday afternoon, nearly 48 hours since Boris Johnson resigned. We haven't seen any more. You'd imagine that they probably would have wanted it done over the weekend, and perhaps we'll hear more on Monday, but this could potentially be it something to consider as we begin the working week tomorrow.
And Labour calling for a general election off all the back of this.
Yeah, that's right. Sir Keir Starmer saying so in the papers today. One of the quotes that really stood out, he said, Rishi Sunak must finally find a backbone, call an election and let the public have their say on 13 years of Tory failure. Here is a member of his shadow cabinet, Pat McFadden.
First of all, he used and played Rishi Sunak to get approval for this honours list that he wanted. But then in that resignation statement that he made on Friday, he has attacked a number of policies around not having a trade deal with the United States. This is not over.
More Tory psychodrama, Rachel. It seems like it's been going on for over a year now, really, doesn't it, since Partygate. And that's something that many in Westminster, from a Conservative point of view, be concerned about, that really what the general public are broadly seeing when they pick up a newspaper or listen to the radio, TV, is that there is infighting within the Conservative Party. There's an old mantra, divided parties don't win elections. The next general election due in about a year's time.
Thank you very much. LBC News reporter James Goodison in Westminster with the very latest there. Now, we heard from Pat McFadden in that report from James, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, where he's been doing the media rounds this morning, following up claims that from Labour that homeowners are spending an extra £7,000 a year in mortgage payments compared to this time 2 years ago. Mr McFadden blamed what he called the reckless gamble by the Conservatives in last year's mini-budget. Well, the government says it is committed to halving inflation this year. A little bit later in the programme, we're going to be hearing more about what you can do to try and bring your mortgage payments down.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
I'm just going to bring you some breaking news. We're hearing 6 boys and 2 girls aged between 15 and 17 have been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 16-year-old boy was stabbed to death in Bath yesterday. This coming in from Avon and Somerset Police. I'll bring you the latest on that as we get any more information on this.
This is LBC News.
Well, we've also been hearing as well of lots of strike action. We know that we've been getting pretty used to industrial action over the past year or so, and it could be set to continue for quite some time in the health service, according to the co-chairman of the British Medical Association, the BMA, that represents junior doctors. Strikes by junior doctors could last until March 2024 or beyond, according to Dr. Rob Lawrenson, that co-chairman, who said that members are going to be reballoted next week until the end of August for an extended 6 months mandate until March. And they said that if we need to, we'll reballot again during that period to extend our mandate further. He's also refused to apologise to patients ahead of walkouts this week. The industrial action taking place in England for 3 days from Wednesday in a row over pay. Well, Dr. Rob Lawrenson saying his members don't want to have to do this.
Government's offer, which was 5% and £1,500, was nothing. So that began to even restore the pay erosion, and in fact would have led to another real terms pay cut. And I'm afraid that there will be some disruption in elective and outpatient care for patients.
Ministers previously called demands for a 35% pay rise unreasonable. While we do know that there are more walkouts, this time at the DVLA. Staff who are working to process driving licences and vehicle tax renewals started 15 days of strike action today. Members of the PCS union are now over pay, pensions and working conditions. The UK government said it is holding regular talks with the union, but big pay rises will prolong the cost of living crisis. Much more on all the latest strike action over our website, lbc.co.uk.
Where the
Valley
news
approach
never
Beechcraft
stops.
Alpha Sierra X-ray Golf Sierra 8,500 feet.
Now, it's been the hottest day of the year so far. Yesterday, highs of 32 degrees recorded in parts of England. We'll see more hot weather on the way as well. But with it, we don't get to enjoy it necessarily. Thunderstorms on the way. We're now having weather warnings from the Met Office. They're saying that the 4 yellow weather alerts are for thunderstorms covering all 4 nations of the UK until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Before that, a yellow warning for rain starts at 7 o'clock this evening, right through to tomorrow morning, southern parts of England and Wales. So the latest on that in the weather update here on LBC News. But we do know that Manchester City are on their way home after winning the Champions League yesterday. They did it. They won the treble. So not only are they champions of the Premier League, they've also won the FA Cup last week, and now they're champions of Europe, doing this historic treble for the first time in the club's history. These fans who were watching at the match in Istanbul, it was pretty emotional for them.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I'm so emotional. I mean, I've been everywhere, Crewe, Shrewsbury, all the outposts over the years. It's a dream come true for us all.
I was there for the FA Cup final, I was there for the Premier League win, and now to be in Istanbul to see City lift old big ears. It's brilliant, come on!
Well, players and fans alike have been praising Pep Guardiola. City manager, defender Manuel Akanji, says he is the best manager in the world.
Obviously, I haven't had all of them, but the way he improves us every week, he gives us new ideas. So yeah, for me, it's a great feeling to get better every day.
And Manchester City is going to be awash with blue shirts. There's going to be a blue moon over Manchester tomorrow as City parade the Champions League trophy on an open-top bus tour through the streets. We're, of course, going to be there and bring you the latest on that as we get it here on LBC News. Still to come on the programme, we'll be taking a look ahead to potentially a history-making day for Novak Djokovic. He can, statistically, become the greatest men's tennis player of all time later if he wins the French Open. I'll bring you the very latest on that. But up next, we've got news headlines.
LBC News weather.
Lots of sunshine around with clearer skies in the south, but warm and humid for most. Thundery showers are expected too, and there's a warning for flooding in parts of Scotland and England with a high of 30 degrees. Tonight, any showers should ease, leaving a mostly dry but warm and humid evening. It'll feel murky, especially in western coastal areas, with a low of 11 in North Scotland. Tomorrow, there's a continued risk of heavy and thundery showers in between frequent spells of sunshine, reaching highs of 28 in the south.
LBC News.
What are you good at? Like, really good at? Got something? Right, now imagine you trained for it, get years of experience, and have a load of happy customers you've done it marvellously for. That's just the start of becoming a tradesperson with Trust a Trader, plus passing their 15-point assessment. So, when you want something doing well, that's a job for the Trust a Trader professionals. Find yours at
When it comes to helping those that really need it, actions speak louder than words. So here's what we've been doing at British Gas. Over the past year, we've given £50 million in energy debt support, including grants to help with bills. And we're keeping homes powered with emergency energy credit. That's enough talking. Let's get on with the doing. British Gas. Eligibility criteria apply.
Hey, Harry.
Hello, mate.
Who do you reckon's going to win the boxing?
It's all about whether the big fella can land his combos. If he goes for the jab hook jab, then a punch jab punch hook, you know he's on for it.
Okay.
But if he can pull out his famous left-right punch jab and give him the old shimmy shuffle, then it's good night, nurse.
Shimmy what?
The shimmy shuffle. Be like the old Jiminy hopscotch, just without the jab jab. Anyway, enough chit-chat. I've got to go.
Make your best bet on the boxing at BetVictor. 18 plus, please gamble responsibly.
At Tesco Mobile, you can bag the incredible iPhone 14 with the most impressive dual camera system on iPhone. Plus, you can enjoy 12 gigs of data with no EU roaming fees this summer. All for just $34.99 a month with club card prices, saving you £126. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 16th of July was $38.49. Club card and 36-month credit agreement required. Full terms, list of roaming destinations and charges are at tescomobile.com/terms.
This is LBC News.
At Lidl, we're always little on price. And now we're proud to officially be the Super Grocer 33 cheapest basket. Beating all of the supermarkets, even with their special loyalty cards. Join 17.5 million other savvy shoppers at Lidl and start saving today. Now that's big on quality and always little on price.
Lidl.co.uk/cheapest basket. 17.5 million based on Kantar 52-week data to the 14th of 23.
with Vodafone Broadband. Full fibre, the UK's most reliable broadband technology, may cost less than you think. Now from only £25 a month for 24 months. Switch today to get reliable broadband without the price tag. Vodafone.
CPI plus 3.9% increase each April. Credit and availability checks apply. Terms and verification at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
How will you react if we call to say you're our latest Win Plus winner?
No way! You're joking. I never win anything.
So far this year on Win Plus, our winners have bagged a spa break, Apple Watch, huge cash prizes, and loads more. Will you be next? Enter now at winplus.co.uk. Great prizes, real winners. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
Because you never know what little pickles will get themselves into. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinnapickle.co.uk. News, sport, travel, weather in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it is 20 to 2. Very good afternoon to you. I'm Rachel Garish. There are now calls for a general election as the Conservatives face a civil war. 3 by-elections have been triggered by the resignation of Tory MPs in just 24 hours, including the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Search teams are looking for 3 British tourists who are missing after a fire on a cruise boat in the Egyptian Red Sea. We are just hearing 8 teenagers have been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 16-year-old boy was stabbed to death in Bath last night. And Labour says last year's mini budget means homeowners are having to spend an extra £7,000 a year on their mortgage. We're going to be hearing more from a mortgage expert to come in the next few minutes.
LBC News. Travel.
Valley Tower
The M3 in
Beechcraft
Hampshire
Alpha
is
Sierra
closed
X-Ray Golf
northbound
Sierra
for
is
weekend
1 mile
roadworks
south,
between junction 5
2,600
for
feet.
Hook and
Uniform
Corey
to
at Allenborough.
land.
On the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire, traffic is being held between junction 11 at Dunstable and 11 at Dunstable South. That's to recover an accident. In West Yorkshire, there are long delays on the M62 westbound from junction 29 at Lofthouse to 28 at Tingley. That's 2 lanes are closed to recover a multi-vehicle accident. I'm Anne-Marie Walsh. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC
Clear
News.
to land runway 31 Beechcraft X-Ray Golf Sierra.
This is LBC News.
And I'm Rachel Garish. LBC News Times coming up to 1:45 on this Sunday afternoon. I'm just going to bring you some more information about that stabbing in Bath. 6 boys and 2 girls have been arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of that teenage boy in Bath last night. Emergency services were sent to an address on Eastfield Avenue just before 11 o'clock at night after reports that the 16-year-old had been stabbed. Members of the public tried to save him with first aid before paramedics arrived. But we're hearing he died at the scene. All 8 remain in police custody. So that being the very latest that we're getting from Avon and Somerset Police. We'll bring you more as we get it.
This is LBC News.
And a search is underway for 3 missing British tourists after a boat fire on the Egyptian Red Sea. LBC News reporter Guy Stewart's been in the statement from the local authority for us.
The Red Sea Governorate says at 9:15 on Sunday morning, a safari boat called Hurricane caught fire following an electric short circuit in the engine room. Authorities established that after their initial investigation at the site about 25 kilometres north of Marsa Alam. They say 15 British passengers were on board at the time, as well as 10 crew members and 2 guides. 12 of the tourists and the same number of staff were rescued. Well, a video on social media published by local reporters appears to show a 3-deck boat engulfed in fire and thick smoke. In it, we can also hear explosive flames taking hold. A Foreign Office spokesperson says they are in contact with the local authorities and are supporting British nationals involved. We understand local emergency services have also been placed on alert to respond to any developments.
Thank you very much, Guy Stewart, bringing us the very latest on that situation in the Egyptian Red Sea. Again, we'll bring you more on this as we get it.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Now, to the latest drama engulfing the Conservative Party. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the Prime Minister must, in his words, find a backbone and send the country to the polls after 3 Conservative MPs quit within 24 hours, of course, including the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, after he was told what was in the Privileges Committee's report into lockdown parties in Downing Street. This triggered 3 by-elections. Labour have already been out campaigning. Well, the party's National Campaigns Coordinator, Shabana Mahmood MP, is clear they're not talking options with any other party, though.
We know the seats that we are looking to win. In order to win the next general election, we are going hell for leather. There are no conversations happening with anybody. I'm running the campaign. I can tell you, no conversations with anyone at all.
Well, Guto Harry is Boris Johnson's former communications director. Can't say whether or not the former Prime Minister will eventually return to politics.
He deliberately leaves us guessing, doesn't he? Hasta la vista, baby, or, more classical references. It's virtually impossible to write him off. But I don't think this is part of an elaborate plot to sort of destabilise and topple Rishi Sunak. I think Boris Johnson feels that there is an opportunity for him now to go off and, lick his wounds, but also sees new opportunities. He's a very talented person. He's in demand around the world as a speaker. He's writing his memoirs. He's a great writer. So there's a little time for him to be out of the fray, but will he come back one day? Who knows?
Guto Harry, Boris Johnson's former communications director, also has a podcast called Unprecedented over on the Global Player, which you can find right now.
LBC News.
Now, also in politics today, we've been hearing from the Labour Party not just calls for a general election, but also about the cost of living crisis. New figures suggesting average mortgage holders across the UK are paying an extra £7,000 a year. The Labour Party's criticised the Tories for what they call their reckless economic gamble after interest rates rose, of course, following the mini-budget in September. The government says it is focused on halving inflation, and it says Labour can't be trusted on the economy. Well, senior economist at Nationwide, Andrew Harvey, spoke to me about current deals a little bit earlier and just what we can do to try and bring our bills down, if anything.
Well, the mortgage market environment is certainly becoming a lot more challenging for borrowers at the moment. What we have seen, certainly in the last few weeks, is quite a considerable increase in new borrowing costs, and that is a reflection of market expectations where interest rates are likely to go in the future. So what we have been seeing is an upward repricing in 2- and 5-year fixed-rate mortgage deals, and that's because markets now expect bank rate will need to be increased to a higher level, potentially to around 5.5%, and stay at a higher level for longer. And that reflects ongoing concerns around the level of inflation and how much monetary tightening is going to be required in order to bring that back towards target over the longer term.
And so are we likely to see these payments going up again in the future?
Certainly in the short term, yes, there's a definite risk we will be seeing mortgage payments increase further. What we had been seeing up until quite recently, actually, is mortgage rates had started to come down. We had a lot of market turbulence, of course, around the mini-budget last autumn, which resulted in a big increase in typical borrowing costs and mortgage payments. And we had been seeing some signs of improvement, but over the last few weeks or so, unfortunately, things have turned the corner in a negative sense. And yeah, it will be likely that the borrowers will be needing to pay more per month. And this also affects borrowers who are looking to refinance as well. So it's not just about new customers who are looking to buy a house, it's also around those who are remortgaging